Welcome to Lesson 2. In our last lesson, we learned to write SMART objectives, but objectives alone don't tell us why the program should work. They tell us what we hope to achieve, but not the mechanism. The causal story that connects what we do to the changes we want to see. That's what a theory of change provides. A theory of change is a narrative and visual explanation of how and why your program will produce its intended outcomes. It makes explicit the assumptions you're making, assumptions that can then be tested and challenged. Let's learn how to build one. By the end of this lesson, you'll accomplish 3 objectives. First, articulate the causal pathway from activities to outcomes. This means tracing the chain of cause and effect that connects what you do to what you want to achieve. Second, identify and document underlying assumptions. Every causal claim rests on assumptions. Making them explicit allows scrutiny. And third, challenge assumptions using behavioral science principles. Many program assumptions are based on intuition rather than evidence. Behavioral science can help us identify which assumptions are likely to hold and which are wishful thinking. A theory of change is a narrative explanation of how change happens. It's the story of your program. If we do this, then that will happen because of this mechanism. It shows the causal chain from activities all the way to long-term impact. Not just that we expect screening rates to increase, but why we expect that. What intermediate changes will happen and why each step leads to the next. Crucially, it makes explicit the assumptions underlying the program. Every program rests on assumptions about human behavior, about context, about how things work. A theory of change brings these into the open. It's different from a logic model, which we'll cover next. A logic model shows what you'll do, what you'll produce, what outcomes you expect. A theory of change explains why, the mechanism that makes the logic model plausible. Building a theory of change starts at the end and works backward. What is the ultimate outcome you want? Reduce diabetes incidence in the community, work backward. What must change for that outcome to occur? People at risk must change their diets and increase physical activity. Continue backward. What produces that change in behavior? People need knowledge about what to do, skills to do it, and an environment that makes it possible. Continue backward. What produces that knowledge, skills, and supportive environment? Education, training, and environmental modifications. Continue backward. What produces that education, training, and environmental change? Your program activities. This backward mapping creates a chain. Each link answers the question. If this changes, why will the next thing change? A useful technique is to express each link in the chain as an if-then statement. If we provide nutrition education, then participants will gain knowledge about healthy eating. If participants gain knowledge, then they will change their food purchasing behaviors. If they change food purchasing, then they will consume healthier diets. If they consume healthier diets, then they will lose weight. If they lose weight, then diabetes risk will decrease. Notice that each then becomes the if of the next statement. The chain should flow smoothly. If it doesn't, if any link feels like a leap rather than a logical step, you found a place where your theory needs strengthening or your program needs adjustment. Here's where theory of change becomes powerful. Every if-then link contains hidden assumptions. If we provide education, participants will learn. What assumptions does this contain? That people will attend, that they'll pay attention, that the education is at the right level for them, that they don't already know this. If they learn, they will act. What assumptions? That knowledge drives behavior, a huge assumption that's often wrong, that they're motivated to act, that they have the resources to act, that no barriers prevent action. For each link in your chain, write down what must be true for that link to hold. These are your assumptions. They're often numerous and they're often unstated. Stating them is the first step to testing them. Behavioral science offers important challenges to common program assumptions. Knowledge rarely drives behavior alone. People know smoking is harmful, yet many smoke. People know exercise is beneficial, yet many don't exercise. If your theory assumes that education will change behavior, it's probably too simplistic. Intentions don't automatically become actions. There's a well-documented intention-action gap. People intend to eat healthy, save money, exercise, and don't. Your theory needs to account for this gap. Environmental factors often override individual motivation. A highly motivated person in an unsupportive environment will struggle. Context matters enormously. Use these insights to strengthen your theory. Don't just assume education leads to behavior change. Design interventions that address motivation, capability, and opportunity together. Not every assumption needs formal testing. Some are well established. We don't need to prove again that physical activity reduces diabetes risk. That evidence exists. Focus on risky assumptions, the places where evidence is weak or where your specific context might be different from what's been studied. Several methods can test assumptions. Literature review. What does research say about this assumption? Pilot testing. Does this work in practice with your population? Community input. Do people in the community think this will work? What are we missing? If testing reveals that an assumption doesn't hold, adjust your program. Maybe you need additional components to address barriers you hadn't considered. Maybe a different approach would work better. This is why we test before scaling. A theory of change should be visualized, not just written in narrative form. Create a diagram showing your causal pathway. Use boxes for outcomes at each level, your activities, the immediate results, the intermediate changes, the ultimate outcomes. Use arrows to show causal relationships. If this, then that. The arrows represent your if-then statements. Add annotations for key assumptions. What must be true for this arrow to hold? You might put assumptions in a different color or in call-out boxes. The visual makes it easier to see the full picture, to spot gaps in logic, to identify where assumptions are weakest, to communicate your theory to others. Let me clarify the relationship between theory of change and logic model, since these terms are sometimes confused. Theory of change explains why. It articulates the mechanism of change, why your activities should produce the outcomes you expect. It surfaces assumptions and provides the rationale. Logic model shows what. It displays program components, inputs, activities, outputs, and expected outcomes in a structured format. It's a summary of the program plan. They complement each other. The theory of change provides the reasoning. The logic model provides the structure. Build your theory of change first. Understand why your program should work, then build your logic model to summarize what you'll do. The logic model is more convincing when backed by a solid theory of change. Let's summarize our key takeaways. Theory of change explains the causal mechanism connecting your activities to your outcomes. It answers why this should work, not just what you'll do. Work backward from ultimate outcomes to build the causal chain. What must change for the outcome to occur, and what produces that change? Express links as if-then statements. If we do this, then that will happen. Each then becomes the if of the next step. Every link contains assumptions that should be made explicit. What must be true for this step to lead to the next? Behavioral science helps identify and challenge weak assumptions. Knowledge behavior links are often weaker than we assume. Intention-action gaps are real. Context matters. In our next lesson, we'll build the logic model, translating our theory into a structured format. Thank you.